G'day guys and girls, that's CaptainKarta and welcome back to CSX Heavy Haul, Train Sim World, CSX Heavy Haul I should say. You join me as we trundle through the Cumberland Yard with unit number 260, a AC 4400 CW, a behemoth of a locomotive, and we are going to go couple onto a consist, actually that one just behind us, the grain cars and the oil tankers, and we're going to have a look at braking systems today. So sit back and relax, and I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. If you do like today's episode, don't forget to press that like button, and if you haven't already subscribed, well, you know what to do. I'll see you guys after the intro. Rightio, we're just gonna quickly switch through a couple of these switches just here, and we're just gonna change our facing direction here. I need to obviously go through some of these switches to get to this siding over here, and this is actually going to be a perfect time for us to look at one of the braking systems today, which is the independent brake. Now this is controlled by your, forgive me, I think they're the parentheses keys, and that's your independent brake. Now this brake, as you can probably tell by the name, it's independent from the other braking systems, and that means it's actually it's a locomotive brake. So when you use the independent brake, you are only applying the brakes on the locomotive itself. Now, it's very important that we're going to learn the brakes before we start learning about everything else. And the reason we want to learn about the brakes is because we need to know how to keep ourselves, obviously we need to know how to slow ourselves down, because it's all well and good to start moving forward, but if you don't know how to slow yourself down, how to stop, then you can't handle yourself in an emergency, or when an emergency situation begins to occur. So, on this particular type of locomotive anyway, there are three different braking systems. You have the independent brake, or the locomotive brake, you have the train brake, or your automatic brakes, and you've also got what's called a dynamic brake. And we're going to touch on all three of these today. Now, as you can tell, we're just moving very, very slowly through the yard here. The yard speed limit at the moment is 15 miles an hour. We're just going to come to a gentle stop. Put the gear into neutral and start to apply the brakes. Now, the thing with the independent brake is you've got to remember, because it's your locomotive brake, depending on your situation, you either need to be very, very graceful and careful with it, or not use it at all. Now, as you can see, I probably could have been a little bit more heavy-handed with the brake application then, but, you know, we're not in any sort of big hurry to get where we're going. Now, this is the Cumberland switchback tutorial. This is the Cumberland switchback scenario, I should say. So this is allowing us to do whatever the heck we please while we're trundling, as long as we stay within the confines. Well, I assume we can go outside the yard. I think we can anyway, but we're going to find out very, very shortly. Now, I'm going to back us onto these cars here. Now, it is important to remember that you can't just go bashing into the cars at any old speed. You need to couple to the cars at a relatively slow speed. Usually anything under 3 miles an hour is ideal. However, I try to aim for about 1.5. 1.5 miles an hour. Good. Nice. You still get a nice solid coupling, but you're not going to damage the freight. You're not going to damage the cars. You're not going to damage the locomotive at all. So as you can see here, I'm just feathering the brake application just till I get what I want. There we go. Right, we are now coupled to the train. We're just going to quickly apply our brakes here. We're going to jump back into the cab. Turn off our rear headlight, we don't need that now, and we're already on front headlights on bright. Wonderful. Funny, that should have already been off. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this consist at the moment. So what I'm going to do, your colon, I think it's your colon, and your apostrophe keys are what controls your automatic brake. You can also control this in the cab. In this particular locomotive, it's this big red handle here. You can see it's on automatic brake release. This one over here is our independent brake, and our throttle is what's going to control our dynamic brake. So first things first, we want to make sure we set our reverser to the forward direction. We're going to release our brakes, and as you can see right now, we've just started to move ever so slowly, and we're just rolling with the natural gravity. Okay. At the moment, brakes are not applied. Now, before we move off, we need to give 2 quick toots to the horn. Rightio, and now we can gently... no, there we go. E1, thank you. Right. And what we'll do, there we go. Up comes the power. And we're just going to trundle through the yard at a nice, gentle pace. We're going to accelerate to the full yard speed limit at the moment, which is 15 miles an hour. And once we hit 15, we're going to demonstrate the different types of brakes. Okay, so as you can see, we've now accelerated to 15 miles an hour, the yard speed limit, and the end of our train is just clearing the siding that it was stored in. It's going to clear it very, very shortly. Once it's cleared, we'll be free to try out our different braking systems. So the first system we're going to do is just the independent brake by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my parentheses keys here, and I'm going to bring us up to 50% application. So 50% independent, or 53 will do. Now, as you can see, that gauge in the bottom right hand corner, you can see the red needle came up, and that means that's the amount of pressure in the brake pipe. Now that means what is actually being sent to the brakes. Now, as you can see, with the weight of the cars behind us, we're not slowing down very, very quickly. We are going downhill on a very, very slight grade, but we are slowing down very, very, very slowly. Now, obviously, we want to be slowing down a little bit quicker than this. Now, if I was to jam the locomotive brakes onto full application, you can see we are going to start slowing down a little bit quicker, but it's still not awfully quick. And that's because the weight of the cars behind us is trying to push us on. Now, this is one of the reasons why we don't use our independent brakes on a consist or a consist. This at the moment is what is called a consist, a group of cars with a locomotive, or even just a group of cars sort of staged together, like those cars we can see in the yard behind us. That there is a consist. Now, as you can see, we've been braking for quite a while, and we've only just come to a stop now. So what we're going to do, we're now going to completely release our brakes. And the key thing to remember here as well is with the independent brake, you've got two different settings. You've got your application, you've then got release, and you've got bail off. Now, you need to remember to bail off the brakes before you actually set them to release, because it's all well and good setting to release, but it doesn't always release your brakes. It will just release the pressure that is applied at that very given point in time. You have to bail off the brakes, which will completely bleed the brake pipe of air and completely release your brakes. This is important. Very, very, very important. So, we're going to give this thing a bit more juice this time. We're going to accelerate back up to 15 miles an hour. And as soon as we've done so, we're going to go test out the automatic brake. So, hang tight, guys, and I will be right back in a second once we're up to 15 miles an hour. Okay, we're now idling in our forward gear at 15 miles an hour. We're gently coasting, again, slightly down grade or downhill, and we're just rolling through the yard with our consist behind us. Now, I'm going to use my apostrophe key, which is next to your enter key on a standard keyboard, and that is going to apply our brakes. Now, what you're going to see happen, actually, I'm going to let you guys watch what's going to happen. Watch your gauges on the right hand side. Now, you can see the white needle starts to drop, and our red needle came up. If I release, our white needle does a bit of a dance, but it will slowly recharge full of air. And as you can see, our red needle has again released. Our red needle shows the amount of pressure actually being applied to the brakes, and our white needle shows us the pressure inside the cylinder, inside the brake cylinders. If I go back into our cab, right, we'll quickly accelerate back up again, and you can watch it here on the display. Okay, I went a slight bit too quick. We actually jumped up to 16 miles an hour, but that's okay. What we're going to do, we're going to go to about 25% application again, There we go. Now you can see that brake pipe pressure needle starts to drop. If the more air I start to require of the brakes, the more that brake pipe pressure reduces. Now what happens is, with your automatic brakes, or your train brakes, it's applying the brakes to each and every single car in the train. Now, the longer the train, the longer time it takes to actually apply your brakes. The same as releasing them. So when you're coming downgrade or downhill, the longer your train is, let's say you're running a 100 car train, the more you apply your brakes, obviously the more brake pressure is going to be applied. However, the more time it's going to take to transition to the very, very back of your train. Same as when you release the pressure. You're releasing the pressure up here in the locomotive. That pressure then has to translate to the entire train all over again. And if you use all of your air, then you need to allow time to allow the brakes to reapply to recharge full of air again. Right, I hope that covers the train brake side of things a little bit more. So I'm going to re-accelerate back up to 15 again, and now we're going to have a look at the dynamic brake. Okay, we're here now at 15 miles an hour again, and we're just trundling along, all happily, all soundly. Now, our dynamic brake, in this particular locomotive, the dynamic brake is controlled on the power handle. Now, as you can see, the power handle, you've got throttle back towards you, you've got your idle there, you've then got your dynamic brake set up, which is the next notch forward, and then your dynamic brakes going forward. Now, the dynamic brake, what it does, in this particular locomotive, it is a diesel locomotive. However, the diesel engine does not directly drive the axles of the locomotive. On each one of these axles is an electric traction motor. Now, these traction motors need electricity in order to actually drive the wheels. So this locomotive in unto itself is basically a gigantic diesel generator. The diesel engine runs, it then generates electricity. That electricity goes to the traction motors, and those traction motors are what drive the locomotive forwards. Now, what we can do is with the dynamic brake effectively reverses the polarity inside those motors, and all of a sudden your electric motors, which are driving you forward, can now be used to assist you in slowing down. So what I do is, on the keyboard, I use the A key as if I was completely reducing the throttle. If I use the A key, it's going to push this power handle first to the setup phase, and then the different dynamic brake stages. So, if I move it forward once, oh, sorry, wrong way, let's try that again, sorry, the D key, I should say. D is backing off, A is accelerating. Try to make your tutorial at least a little bit accurate. Good on you, Captain. Right, D key, there we go. We're now into the setup phase. You can now see the amp gauge down the bottom. It's already actually started to apply the dynamic brakes, and if I go forward to braking number 1, go braking number 2, braking number 3, braking number 4, you can see your amps is now going into minus. Now this means it's reversed the polarity of the motors. It is now, those amperage that's being generated is now slowing down the traction motors. Braking 5, braking 6, braking 7, braking 8. You've got 8 notches in your dynamic brake, and as you can see, we are slowing down, pretty much on par with the independent brake. Now, your dynamic brake is very good for going down hills, and the more locomotives you have in the consist, the more effective that dynamic brake is going to be. And very, very shortly we're going to come to a stop. And just to bring the train to a complete halt, we're just going to set our independent brake. And there we go. Train is now holding. On the grade, we're now not moving. Actually, we are moving just a little bit, the way the train is pulling us. So we're going to apply our automatic brakes. There we go, 55%. Beautiful. We're not moving. Wonderful, we're not moving. Of course we're not moving, because we're testing our brakes. Now, the one other type of brake that we haven't covered here, the astute among you would have probably picked this up by now. I believe it's down the back here, or it's on the front. or the other side. There it is right there. Rightio. This here, this big wheel looking device, we'll jump down here. That there is the handbrake. Think of it like the handbrake in your car. You turn this wheel, it applies the brakes to the axles and stops your train from moving. Effective most when parked. So if I turn that, it goes to applied. It's now applied the handbrake to these axles. Now your carriages, or your cars, or your wagons have the same thing. So if we go to the back here, there we go. There's a handbrake there, it's showing us release. There's the handbrake chain. That chain goes to the brakes here on the axles. Turn that, applies the handbrake to that car. I can do the same. There we go, on the tank car. Turn it again, releases the handbrakes. If I climb back up here onto the locomotive, turn that wheel again, our handbrake is now released. Rightio, so I hope that covers the braking systems fairly well, guys. If there's a tutorial or if there's a specific thing about railroads or about Train Sim World in general that you would like to know, I would be very, very happy to do a video for you. Just let me know in the comments if there's anything specific you'd like me to look at. As always, if you've liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button as well. And leave a comment down below with your questions, your queries, your comments and your concerns. Also, don't forget to check out the link in the video description below to the CaptainKarta Discord channel. Very much a lot of fun there, guys, and this is also where we organise any of our multiplayer streams where I need some of you fine, willing targets, I mean friends, to come and play some games with me. As always, guys, take care. I've been CaptainKarta. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will catch you all later.